Hi, today I'm going to do the 13th. I jumped the gun with the 14th of the Deep State presentations. I still had to finish Hill House School in London, which is the alma mater of my brother. And then, I've also been working on the his other alma mater, which is Woodbury Forest in Virginia. Now, the one of the alumni there is Marvin Bush. Um, he's he's the brother, the brother of the second. They call him, I guess, 43 Bush president, and so that really opened Pandora's box with the Bush family. So there's a whole thing that's going to be one presentation in and of itself, just the Bush family. And there's a lot of people from Woodbury Forest. That's it's even kind of a brother school of my alma mater in England, excuse me, in Virginia, Foxcroft, sorry. So anyway, uh, here again, a quick review, this whole series of deep state videos started with a discussion between Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon about how we need to end we have to stop the unending wars that the Americans are always getting into. I mean, it's not just the Americans, it's everybody. But we've got to stop them. And in order to do that, we need to get rid of the deep state. So that begs the question, Helen, what is the deep state? That's when I get into the second video. Then the rest, I go into a whole slew of kind of my research, because I've been working on family court reform, but court reform, due process, rule of law. I mean, I keep on saying, I don't care what your politics is, uh, you should have no problem what I'm advocating and what I'm calling for, because I mean, if you do, one needs to ask why. You want to maintain corruption and violence and extremism and overspending and overindebtedness and the whole kit and caboodle. So nobody should have any problem with what I'm advocating. However, they do, and I've just been canceled and marginalized. That's not only by my family and friends, by academia, all of the human rights, the women's rights, the domestic violence. I'm a persona non grata. Why? Because they are making money from all of this, and of course, if we stop it, then they don't make money anymore. And how are they going to make a living? So, yeah, that is kind of the problem. So, anyway, here I went into, I mean, of course, you got to start with your children if you want to change the way things are going. You want to look at changing the way you're educating your children. So I go into my alma mater in Virginia, Foxcroft School, and then in England, Cobham Hall. And that has both of them. I mean, Foxcroft is all of the robber baron heiresses, and then there's Cornelia Guest, Deb of the Decade. And then Cobham Hall I got into the British aristocracy, which includes Princess Antonia, who's the great 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 granddaughter of Kaiser Wilhelm, and then there's Duchess Percy, who I still have my fingers crossed that I might hear back from. Not counting my chickens before they're hatched, and none of them have been hatching for many, many, many a year, decades. So anyway, yeah, I just keep on going. So as I say, um, the 12th video is the Hill House. That's King Charles' alma mater, and this I'm going to finish it up because in that one I looked at the reality show participant and conservative Jacob Rees-Mogg and Ian McPherson, the celebrities, and a Spanish singer. Oh, I forget. That was a while ago, so I forget all of the names of those. But that was the first presentation. This again, I keep these slides in the presentation because they are important videos to be looking at because it's the economy. Everything, you want to find solutions, you need to get into, if everybody has a job, first things first, everybody has a job and is, can put food on the table and keep a roof over their head. That's where you can start in bringing peace and having people listen and get along and solve other problems. But that's, if your economy is not stable and sustainable, then the rest, it makes no difference. So here's always the Chomsky propaganda model. Unfortunately, Chomsky is one of the propagandists in academia. He's a Israeli Zionist, Marxist, who's living in the upper crust neighborhoods of Tucson, Arizona, where I grew up. I'm like, excuse me, what's wrong with this picture? So when I lived there, it was out in the middle of the desert. I mean, it just makes me so sad to see what's done. It's in the Catalina foothills of Tucson. And now you got strip malls, spas, all sorts of stuff. When I lived there, it was just cactuses, wildlife, coyotes. And so anyway, but I'm like, okay, when I lived there, it was filled with Republican fascists, my mother at the lead, and coyotes and nature. And now it's all of these luxury spas and the communist is sitting in $1 million home while I'm in DC working on workers' rights and trying to get him to look at my research into the how the gossip and rhetoric of women, particularly between themselves and setting the standards and norms within social orders for the men and for everyone. How this affects governance and politics and democracy and getting in workers' rights, etc. Because he's a linguist, you would think. I'm like, come on, you would think he would be interested, but no, he has been ignoring me. I got a couple of emails back. Yeah, I'll look into it. I'll look into it. See, this is the problem with the experts. They all want to get up on a podium. They all want to give speeches. They all think that they know everything. But then it's like, okay, well, yeah, you're right here, so let's get something done about it. No, that's how you end up with a dictatorship because the ruling elite just want to sit around, chew the fat, complain, get fat and happy. While everybody else, well, the economy and commerce and social orders and political institutions, well, I mean, it's not rocket science. So, yeah, one of the things that my mother was always very, very proud of was that Hill House, the headmaster of Hill House, who was the founder, chose the students based on his approval of their mothers. And I'm like, well, you know what? might want to look some at some of your notable alumni. I mean, these are the ones that you guys are putting on the internet that are your great success stories and justifying your, well, England is cheaper at 35, 45, 50. I think tops is maybe 60,000 quid per year, which is steep, but it's not quite as steep as the Americans. Foxcroft nowadays is 70 for Americans, 77 for international students. Thousand, not $70. Yeah, so anyway, it's like, okay, you guys, well, let's take stock. When I was just listening to Pierce Morgan, and he's in LA. And this gets into it. I'm like, wait a second, Pierce Morgan, you're here in my country, making a fortune while the country goes to shit. The public debt just topped 37 trillion. I'm here posting everything on the internet. You have all of this, team and all of these resources. Like, don't you think you should be held to account? I mean, you have this big platform, you can expose, people are listening to you. So don't you have a responsibility to do your homework? Particularly, I'm working on both sides of the Atlantic, you know. So when it comes to the end of the day, you're on both sides of the fence and you could be held responsible for, because let's see, I'm pretty sure, I don't know how easy it is to send something in, but I'm sure I've sent something through to Pierce Morgan's team. If not, I'll check into that and I'll send it if I haven't. If you can get through this is another thing. You guys get up on a podium, you get a bunch of snot-nosed brats around them, and, you know, with their audience, and they just want to be popular and rake it in. Well, like, you're bitching about all of this stuff, as I keep on saying. If I want this, I could go and hang out in a country club with a bunch of, bored suburban housewives. It's no different. So do something about it. So, yeah, this I'm going to try and get through quite quickly because there are a lot of slides. So here again, as I say, these are your great success stories for the prep schools, the schools in England, which are supposed to be preparing the upper crust to assume, leadership roles in the social order, commerce, and government institutions. So, it's all you're producing. It's like, okay, celebrity this, celebrity that, and a celebrity comedian. I mean, sure, I'm the first to say, my Lord, we do need comedians amongst us, otherwise we really would go crazy. And that comedians, you can get away with a lot more in terms of exposing and taking painful and difficult subjects and transmit a message through comedy that is much um, more difficult to do or more controversial to do through drama or through different genres. So, I'm the first to support comedians and that art. However, again, what, you just want to go up and get on a podium and make people laugh, and that's your contribution to society. Well, you shouldn't expect great salaries or great value within the society if that's all you think that that you're there to do. And unfortunately, I mean, what Hollywood is filled with it. Um, so yeah, oh gosh, we'll get into that with Bush. There's Billy Bush. Oh, and Billy Bush, I came with an interview with Billy Bush and Rob Lowe. Oh, Lordy Lord. Yeah, so anyway, the world is very, very small when one gets up to the upper crust. and it's not a pretty picture. So anyway, then we have this other Rupert Degas, and then this other, he's a Christian revivalist, Nicky Gumbel. And there's no problem. Here, I'll play this for a second. There's no real, some of these problems that the psychologists and, whether it be secular or religious type of psychobabble that they've been coming out with, some of it has its merit, and you can say, yeah, some people, you need to stop going shopping and look in the mirror and reflect a little bit about something other than yourself. But okay. But then sometimes it gets too much into a cult. Come on.
What should I wear? What's the weather going to be like? What's happening today? How am I going to fit everything in? But then there are those bigger questions. Like, why am I here? Where am I heading? Is this it? Is there more to life than this? These are life's big questions. But there's rarely enough time to think them through properly.
We all have different perspectives on the meaning of life and faith. And Alpha is an opportunity to explore life's big questions.
This is a great place to come together and talk about them openly and honestly. I'm Gemma.
I'm Toby.
And this is Alpha.
I go on Google.
I definitely Google.
I go on Wikipedia.
Internet.
I scroll through all the different answers, and then I try and combine it, and then make my own kind of cornerstone.
Or smart friends.
I don't ask big life questions. It's too hard to answer.
Google or my grandmother.
I meditate or I read.
When I have a big life questions, I probably go to my family.
I haven't really had any mess with what to say.
To my mom or my dad, basically.
My mom or my dad, maybe my gran. I get most of my answers from the library in any section there because I don't really trust the people that I'm around.
The key is always to yourself. You got to figure some things out for yourself.
If I'm confused, I go to him first. And he confuses me more.
But when it's something more personal, I try to find it within myself first.
Friends of mine told me that the first night they came to Alpha, they sat in their car for half an hour waiting and watching people going in. And eventually when they'd seen enough normal looking people going in, they thought they'd give it a try.
And one thing that might be going through your mind is, am I going to be the only one there who doesn't believe all this stuff, who's not a Christian, that doesn't go to church? Well, if that's you, then you're in the right place. Alpha is designed for people who wouldn't call themselves Christians or who are not regular churchgoers.
It might feel a bit strange to be discussing life and faith with people that you've never met before. But the best thing about Alpha is often the great friendships that have formed over the weeks.
For much of my life, I was not remotely interested in Christianity. In fact, I don't think I'd ever come to something like Alpha. I was not brought up as a Christian. My father was a secular Jew. He was an agnostic, and my mother didn't go to church, and I had no interest at all in Christianity. First of all, I just thought it was so boring. Everything to me about church, Christianity, religion was just dull and dreary. And it kind of made me feel a little bit guilty. I didn't know why, but I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I also thought it was untrue. I thought I'd sort of thought it through, and I'd come up with these intellectual objections, and I called myself, very pretentiously, I called myself a logical determinist. And I quite enjoyed arguing with people who called themselves Christians. And at university, I had a bit of a reputation for being an argumentative atheist. And I also thought it was irrelevant to my life. I couldn't see how someone who'd lived 2,000 years ago, 2,000 miles away, could have any relevance to my life today. It just seemed outdated and irrelevant. But at the same time, looking back now, I would say something was missing. I say that because I don't think I was living in the moment. I was always looking forward to the next thing in life. So when I was at school, I was thinking, when I finish my exams, maybe that will be when I'm going to really start to enjoy life. I finished my exams, and then after about 3 weeks, I started to think there's got to be more to life than this. And I thought, well, maybe when I've left school, that will be what life's all about. And then I left school, and after about 3 weeks, I started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. I thought, well, maybe the answer is to get a girlfriend. And somehow, I don't know how I managed it, but I managed to find a girlfriend. Again, after about 3 weeks, I started to think, there's got to be more to life than this. And basically, there was something missing. I was longing for more.
The actor Jim Carrey once said, "I wish everyone could get rich and famous and have everything they've ever dreamed of, so they would know that's not the answer." Some people dream of having their name in lights, of fame and fortune. Some people dream of finding happiness through relationships, careers, money, whatever it may be. But do you ever get that niggly feeling that as good as those things are, there must be more to life?
Yeah, all too often life just doesn't turn out the way we think it should. And even when it does and we achieve our wildest dreams, it's somehow never quite enough. It just doesn't satisfy. It's like there's something missing. The comedian and actor Russell Brand said, "Drugs and alcohol are not my problem. Reality is my problem. Drugs and alcohol are my solution to fill up a hole inside me." And Jesus said, "I am the bread of life." In other words, I'm the one who fulfills the longing that's deep inside every human heart. Jesus.
Okay, I'll hold it there. Yeah, no, of course I agree. I mean, my concern always with any type of this, and it seems like a good program. My concern, this is the way cults are developed, and this is also, exactly how it's structured and exactly how it works. So you always have the danger of any of these things turning into cults, dangerous cults, when the leadership is not, all there, or with malintent. So anyway, which I don't think is the case here. It's funny. Yeah, I'd love to sit down and talk to this guy. Yeah, because I mean, I kind of had the same thing with going to church and stuff, but I was like, no, you people are a bunch of hypocrites. Talk about being kind and everything like that, and then stabbing each other from the back all the time, and then you come and then you like all of this bullshit rhetoric, and so yeah, let's just say we were never, and I never, I was never an atheist. In fact, I always remember this discussion with my my father-in-law. He one time, because he asked me, and I said, well, I'm an agnostic. And he said, what's that? Agnostic. And because I mean, he didn't speak English, and he's like, what's that? And I said, well, it's somebody who, I mean, it's not that I don't believe in God. I don't believe, and I don't not believe. I don't know. I can't say. And also who am I? And because they were atheists. And I always said, well, an atheist is just as extremist as these, Bible waving hypocrites, saying if you don't believe me, you're and you don't believe in God, like I say, then you're going to hell. And so I find it just as extreme. I mean, I don't know. We really don't know until we die, and kind of too late. So, but I always believed in the possibility, and there's certainly stuff going on that we don't know about, and uh, that there would be some force guiding us, yes, but all this religious stuff, yeah. I was like, you want to sit and debate me on that one? Even my professors, I think, were like, no, you don't want to do that. She'll chew you up and spit you out, even if she's just a kid. And I've done my homework this time. Oh, I'm ready. I mean, I can go to any of the think tanks. No preparation. You just send me in, walk in, I'll go listen to their panel discussions, get up in their Q&A and say, you're full of shit. So, drain the swamp. This is the problem. We've got cacophony, and it's ludicrous that Janine Pirro is not listening to me. I just sent a solicitation to it's the Attorney General's Office of DC. This is the Civil Rights Division. And I got a, not interested email back. And I mean, it gets, there's always this caveat that says, oh, and be careful because statute of limitations. I'm like, oh, screw you people, your statute of limitations. I mean, it's incredible. So New York, hasn't anybody noticed that all the Me Too stuff has been gone through New York, or lots of, at least the whole high profile stuff? And they keep on sending stuff. I mean, even Kelly Rutherford's case was, that was New York and California. But, and Dominic Strauss-Kahn was New York. But, they passed some law about statute of limitations, and this had to do with going after the Epstein scandal and all of those girls, and others as well. But that was a Me Too law, and which everybody said it's unconstitutional, and I agree. You can't just, you have that, the statute of limitations that does get into the Constitution. I can't remember which one it is, but there is that statute of limitations. However, I bypassed the statute of limitations. I've known that was coming from the beginning, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to change the laws, and I'm not going to change the rules. I'm not going to try and change the rules of the game. I find the rules of the rules here in the laws, the constitutions, the conventions, the penal code, the civil code. I got no problem with. I agree wholeheartedly. Now, if you guys are too stupid, can't figure out how to use this stuff, well, I can. Screw you. I win. This is, everybody keeps on telling me, oh, well, it's just you don't know how to work the system. I'm like, no, you're working a system that's illegal. I'm working a system that's legal. At the end of the day, I'm on solid ground. At the end of the day, you're sitting on quicksand. So, I have based it on all of that. Now I got off on a tangent. So anyway, we'll get back to Hill House. Sorry, as I say, I went off on a tangent and I don't know where I went. So with, I think it was, because I think, yeah. So yeah, he had talked about this, that he came from a secular Jewish family, that this was his father, who was practiced law in that city. Let's see, a German, I'm not sure which city, but it was definitely in Germany. So he became one of the victims and was expelled from Germany. That would have been under the Nuremberg laws, just like with Marianne Seigart's family. And this is where I get into Marianne Seigart's family. And this also gets into what I was saying before about the unofficial laws and the official laws, because Marianne Seigart's father was the author of The Lawful Rights of Mankind. And he was a British barrister. And that book, went into how to implement the international conventions and human rights standards into standard operating procedures within the courts. Now, a book review that was done when the book came out in '85 was done by Alexander Joel, or is it Joel Alexander? I forget. Alexander Joel Alexander. Um, and he, go figure, he ended up as a lawyer, a civil rights lawyer for the CIA. Go figure. But anyway, his point in his book review so many years ago was that, you know, that it was naive of the author, Paul Seigert, to believe that these conventions and these instruments would be implemented and that the lawyers would know what to do with them. Now, I agree with the lawyers would have to know what to do with them as part of the problem, but they would be implemented. Well, this is also where women setting the standards and norms comes in, because all the standards and norms that have been set are illegal. I keep on telling everybody what you're doing is illegal. And it's not illegal. Well, it's always immoral. But sometimes it's not illegal, but it's immoral. It's always wrong. And they just go, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care. I'll call the girl I work with. I mean, I was like, my God, do you ever lift your head out of that phone? Continually. And she has no interest on any, and I'm like, well, do you have an interest of anything that goes on in your country or any politics of your country? Or she's like, no. I am sorry, but inundating a city with people who have absolutely no morals, absolutely no interest, you know, and I don't care if you're intentionally inundating a city with a workforce that will destroy the economy and destroy the society and destroy the political institutions, or it's just happening by osmosis. I don't care if it's intentional or not. It's wrong and it's illegal. And there, you know, there is no excuse to allow it to happen. Um, so because Marion Seigert, this is her father's work. And what I'm trying to do is implementation of her father's work. You would think that she would be interested. But beyond that, this is her great grandfather, I think it would be, Rudolf Singer. He was a banker, and he also worked with the government, kind of like the Secretary of Treasury. I mean, of course, you have a different system, but he was involved with the government and the banking system, and was kind of the Andrew Mellon of Vienna, which eventually those economic problems created the crash of 29. He got blamed for it, just like Andrew Mellon did, but that eventually led to the rise to power of Hitler. And the American industrialists, all of it, we'll see with like the Bushes, what I'll be getting into later, and even the Kennedys, the Joe Kennedy. Joe Kennedy ended up being the American ambassador to London. And, it was always like, well, he didn't have a problem with Hitler's because he was anti-Semitic, didn't have a problem with Hitler's solution to the Jews. So, and I mean, see, the thing is, his first son, who was like his father, was killed in World War II, and that's why JFK was the spare, and RFK was the second spare, and Ted Kennedy was the third spare. By the time I got to the third spare, and then you got Chappaquiddick, they got in there, so that was gone. So anyway, I mean, oh, poor Bobby Kennedy. Oh gosh, I just saw him being gone after with Elizabeth Warner. I mean, she should be ashamed of herself. But anyway, hopefully Nicky Gumbel will take an interest in my work and listen to me and use his position. And because this does, I mean, there does need to be a renaissance within the religious institutions, and the secular, well, that's just a money making business. So, renaissance, I mean, within the universities, I mean, I see no hope for the human rights, the women's rights, the domestic violence, all of those nonprofits. They are money making businesses. I have yet to meet anybody within them. I mean, I even got in with a canvasser from Sierra, what is that, the Sierra Club or something. And I mean, you talk about your arrogance, little snot-nosed brats. I took his name. It won't give you anything more than the first name, exactly the street corner, the time. I'm like, okay, I'm going to find out who you are. But I'm tired of this. Even the canvassers are arrogant. I'm like, don't you realize that you were just getting money for a whole fraudulent system? Okay, I mean, some of them do. There was actually one kid, I haven't seen him for a while, but he was like, oh, because I explained to him what was going on, and he was like, yeah, I know. I'm like, I understand they have to pay rent, and they can't, for them quitting their job, that's not going to change anything. I get it. But being aware of that and being like, okay, well, when there's another opportunity, I'll be involved. And I'm like, yeah, give me a voice and we'll change this around. And we will, people with good faith, get involved in these things. But then, these people, oh, I don't care. I want the money. So it's like, yeah, that's how protection rackets and mafias work. That's how we get John Rico. It's not rocket science. So I guess one of the main points I wanted to make with this, with the Hill House, the previous and this video, and that did get into some of the people from Foxcroft, because that got in, excuse me, from Cobham, because Cobham, there were five celebrity journalists, because you have Marianne Seigard, Alex Crawford, she's a war correspondent, so I won't go there. I mean, that was already seen. You can go and see that. So Alex Crawford, Annabelle Hesseltine, she is British. She does kind of like environmental stuff. I'm like, okay, well, that's important, but you do need to have a wide variety of interests. And also, just because you're a journalist, that doesn't mean you don't have any civic duty as a person to be informed, but rather just, spread the propaganda of whoever you work for. Then there's Angeli Rao, anorexic, this, like the Real Housewife. I mean, let's just talk about what role models we do not need for our young women. And then Michelle Hussain, that's Pakistani. Well, she's kind of a repeat of Amal Clooney, except she ends up as a journalist, and Amal Clooney ends up as a human rights lawyer, because the human rights industry and legal community has been complicit to the unending wars and crimes against humanity and genocides and, self-destructive societies and governments. It makes them, then make lots and lots of money. And there's an unending supply of cases. So, you know, those, as I say, that's because they're like both of their mothers were kind of beauty queen journalists themselves. I think it was particularly Amal Clooney's mother who was a beauty queen. But same can of worms with these two women. So this also gets into the immigration issues of the upper crust. You know, everybody's talking about Pierce Morgan was talking earlier with it's a guy from the uh border patrol, and he makes a lot of good points. Uh well, looking into that with the Bush family. But so anyway, you know, the like my global expats project was modeled after the Federation of American Women's Clubs Overseas, which was started by Caroline Curtis Brown, an American in London, with the idea that enlightened women around the world could do much to promote international peace. And that is true. The key word there is enlightened women who want to work together instead of backstabbing bitches who only care about themselves and advancing their careers. Need I say more? We go on and on. So with so you had those celebrity journalists. They're all from the communications revolution, really, that happened in the 1900s, 1940s on, and or World War II. I mean, I guess maybe it would start like during World War II, because they did use a lot of propaganda to sell that war. Uh, so Robert Maxwell was a key figure, and here there's the information about Robert Maxwell. But the issue there is this happened under Queen Elizabeth's watch. You know, she's this great queen, Well, there was all sorts of stuff going on under her watch. How did he come to power? He's a Czech. So he's a foreigner. Again, we get the foreign influence and the foreigner coming in, and that all ended. You know, he defrauded his the pensioners of the company, his last company. It goes through all of this stuff, but the point being, you know, the mainstream media that has been dispersing just propaganda and turning societies in collusion with the educational systems into brain dead idiots, misinformed, extremists, and incapable of being, you know, participating in any kind of democratic process and any sense of civic duty, which is necessary to participate in that process. So, this, you know, look how that ended up. So then you had Maxwell, and he gets killed. Ghislaine is in the United States, and in fact, King Charles, when he went to Hill House, this was the first time somebody from the royal family, not just the British royal family, but see, all of the royals across Europe and traditionally were always homeschooled. I mean, don't even get me started on homeschooling. That is a bad idea for many reasons. But so they were always homeschooled and had nannies and professional nannies like Mary Poppins. So this is the first time, but one of the reasons that they would be kept out of, you know, public schools, out of school systems, was the bad influence that might happen with them interacting with the commoners. And I mean, okay, the aristocracy that go to the prep schools or traditionally did, this is of course what we're going to, she didn't put them, start putting her children into, you know, some public school in some poor neighborhood of London, of course. So that wasn't, but this was a you know, a step towards a more democratic uh, aristocracy, but it was just smokes and mirrors. Because the thing is Queen Elizabeth, we'll get into this. I have one, if I can hear later, that gives, you know, a lowdown on her reign, whether it was really this great success story. So again, we see how that ends up. You know, Ghislaine Maxwell, I mean, that's a very, very dysfunctional family for a variety of reasons. I mean, they did have it was a brother, I believe it was, but there was a death of a sibling. And so of course that affected her mother very much. And I think the sibling was sick. So, you know, that does have a very detrimental effect on a family just for many practical reasons. So anyway, this is, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell, when she came to New York, I mean, this is the same. London is no different, and has been for a long time. In fact, I mean, New York and London are going back centuries. It's the same type of dynamics and party hardy lifestyle, and decadence and, you know, Mandevillean economies that are going on there. So, you know, Ghislaine, you can say, I mean, I'm like, wait a second, Ghislaine's sitting in prison all of these years. What about all of these others, like Catherine Oxenberg? You know, I've always gone on about Cornelia Guest selling the elitism to the American people back in the 70s and 80s. But Catherine Oxenberg, she was, if people don't remember,
I want to compound my money long term. That's why I choose Acorns for my investing needs. They let me invest spare change for my everyday
And you, Amanda, can run along now.
Love this
Is he
thing.
your personal property suddenly? I don't have to answer to you about anything, including the men I date. And Clay is my date tonight.
Well, I suppose you better enjoy him while you can.
What's that supposed to mean? I asked you something.
Well, here's your answer.
Well, Miss Perfection, you look like a cat on a rainy night. You pathetic little twit. You'll never get Clay, Amanda. He wants the real one, not a plastic excuse for it. I haven't finished with you yet.
See, the thing that's so funny about this scene is this is also a takeoff and a repeat of Crystal Carrington, Crystal and Alexis Carrington. Joan Collins was Alexis, and Linda Evans was Crystal. Crystal, the angel. So anyway, that was the fountain fight. Oh my goodness, that was the big thing of this. I should forget which year that had to have been, 83, 82, 83. But Dynasty, I mean, you had Dallas and then Dynasty. And but you know, Catherine Oxenberg, she just like she has a sister, Caroline, I think it is. But even their mother went back and tried to run for an elected position in Yugoslavia. but that's Eastern Europe. But which is the same Czechoslovakia. So these are problems because history keeps repeating itself, and everybody just like moves around and stuff, and the same families are involved in just repeating the same paradigm and the same problems. They just move countries. So my thing is all of you guys want to focus on the poor immigrants. What about the rich immigrants? They do much more damage and need to a wake-up call. I mean, just as much as, well, you're going to throw them out, and then you hear, and they have families, and they have lives, and, well, yeah, okay. ICE. Although there are a lot of people in Washington that I do want ICE to show up at their door, and you leave, seize their assets, because there are a lot of people who have been involved there's no excuse. So again, the Queen Elizabeth's reign, when it started, England was almost 100% white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. I mean, for them, the problems were with the Catholics. Just like in the United States, well, to a less extent with the United States, we always were much more of a melting pot, but we were, mainly the Spaniards got the South and the French got the North. So we were mainly English, with some of the Germans and Polish and stuff, but mainly English. So this is, again, it's not been a great success story. So here you had what happened to the aristocracy. Come on. There we go.
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words.
So if you like British history and classic literature like Jane Austen or the Bronte sisters, you may notice that there's this whole big group called the aristocracy that pretty much rules England. But whatever happened to them? Do they still exist today? And how did they topple from being the top of the top to, well, not top of the top of society anymore? Well, those are the questions we're going to be answering for you here today. My name is Ellie Dashwood, and this is my channel where I talk about classic literature and history. If you like either of those things, please subscribe. So this video is actually a follow-up to the video I made on what is the British aristocracy. So definitely go check that out too if you haven't seen it, because in there I really break down how this group was formed and how they did rule so many different aspects of society. Here today we're going to be talking about how they sort of lost their power and their control over those things. Just as a recap, in that video I talk about how they ruled in government, the church, the law, the military, fashion, education, just pretty much all these things you can think about, of course, the land. Now, how did they lose their power? So first up, let's talk about government a little bit. Basically, what started to happen in the Victorian era was liberal government reform started happening. Of course, so these liberals started to attack a lot of the privileges that allowed the aristocracy to stay in power. And one of the major ones was changing of voting laws, because up until this time, the people who could vote in government elections were mostly male landowners in the country, which of course, male landowners in the country are all pretty much country gentlemen, members of the gentry. They're going to more than likely elect people who had their values at heart. But by changing these laws so that men in the city, men who weren't landowners, could start voting, they also redistributed voting boundaries. This dramatically changed who was going to get elected into the House of Commons, which of course then you had so many more people representing different groups and interests that they were going to start taking down, again, the top of society's privileges. Another way they really affected these elections was they put in place some anti-corruption laws in election processes. Like I talk about in my other video, these landed gentry families were getting their younger sons elected into the House of Commons, and they were putting all of this money behind these elections. So really, the common average guy couldn't stand up to the younger sons of these families. But when they put all these anti-corruption laws in place, it made it harder for these families to consistently get their sons elected, which let even more liberals into the House of Commons. And so it became this cycle that was starting to really come in and strip away the power of the aristocracy. So then this new, more liberal parliament was able to go in and start raising taxes against the most rich and powerful people of the country, which were, of course, landowners. And they did this in a few different ways. One was they dramatically increased inheritance tax. And so if you think about it, we see this in Downton Abbey. They're very worried about inheritance tax, which is if the dad dies and the estate passes to anyone else, there's going to be this huge tax on it. And sometimes this was now starting to require families to sell off land. They had to sell off their art to pay this tax. And so each time somebody died...
I'll leave it there because this is a double-edged sword, because of course it's like, well, yeah, this gives the lower classes a very, very stratified society. Is how we ended up always with wars. The have-nots getting angry at the haves, and then they want to topple them. So this is, of course, where liberalism is justified, and we'll know you want to have more opportunity for social mobility and give opportunity to people who, just because of their birth, they weren't, they might have the brains to make money or create businesses and be productive in the society and have talents that will help the society, but they weren't born with any money, and having the money concentrated in the hands of certain people who just, because they happen to be in that group, born in that group, or they're liked, whatever means they get into that group, well, that concentrated wealth, but they're not necessarily, they're not going to be able to know what to do with that wealth or that power. But what's happened, and see there, what was going on was with the Industrial Revolution, the power was degraded of the aristocracy, but that was the landed gentry. Those were the people, the farmers. So that went, so then it went into the hands, but what happened at the end was that you just had a new aristocracy that was created with a nouveau riche aristocracy, but of industrialist. So it hasn't been, a net positive effect in England. It has had a very, very detrimental effect. And here's another.
Hello, welcome to today's sociocultural screencast. Focus is on 20th century Britain and the social and cultural factors that shape participation in this time period. Now, I'll put onto here, this is quite an interesting time period with regard to sports participation. So we have a look across here. We've got our normal social and cultural factors that come down here, and I think it's just worth having a look back into this. So if you look here, we think post-1850 Britain we've just looked at. Okay, we had a look at this kind of quite complex period when you've got post-1850 Britain, where there was times were still pretty tough with regard to time, income, and things like that for the working class. And then this last period here, things started to change better. Now, what happens as you get into 20th century Britain? This period from 1870, when we started to have the Saturday Half-Day Act, there was a 56-hour working week rather than a 72-hour working week. All these things, there's more disposable income. This stuff all of these social and cultural factors kind of stayed the same from 1870 up to about 1950. And the reason for this is because there were 2 world wars in this period here. So things pretty much stayed the same. And then once you get past this point, things started to change a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is give you an overview of those changes, and we'll have a look. A lot of the stuff doesn't change, certainly down from class, law and order, gender, education, and then when we get down, a bit of education, and when you get down to here, we'll start to look at some modern changes in the last part of the 20th century. Okay, so let's have a look. First up then. So first slide is really straightforward. And I suppose the first thing I should say is that actually, if you look at this, in the 20th century Britain, you've got to think that this is only, the latter part of it is only like 25, 30 years ago when you get to 1990. And you look at it from here. In this later part of the 20th century, the later part of the 1900s, social class, the lines between classes were not as rigid, okay? So the social classes started to become blurred a little bit. It wasn't as distinct as upper, middle, lower, working class. It wasn't direct lines there. But the point we've got to know is that actually, when it comes to influencing participations and activities that the lower class people did or classes did, it still had an impact. So all you have to know is that basically social class, although it was less distinct, it still influenced activities. So if we have a look at that, still a 3-class society, and it would still influence activities even though the class lines weren't as rigid. So if we look from here, upper class would still do activities like hunting, really good one to use. Middle class would do activities such as rugby union and golf. This started to become more and more popular for middle class. And then on top of this, you had lower class doing activities such as association football or rugby league, which is the professional version or the early professional version of rugby that took place in the north. So, of England, that is. So go down from there. Once we know this, so we look at what I said before.
I mean, that gives you more of what they're doing in their leisure time, because of course, sports is usually for the leisure time. I mean, hunting, you could argue, was originally so you could eat, but anyway, so yeah, she was very young. It wasn't, I mean, her father died. It was very unexpected that she would become queen so quickly. So you have to, what was it, like early 20s? I forget exactly how old she was. She was married, and did they have, I think they might have had Charles. So, of course that factors in. But at a certain point, she is the queen and she is responsible for what goes on during her reign. And this, here I got into the, because one of the things was the person who recommended that King Charles go to Hill House was somebody who was, I forget exactly what communication, BBC or whatever, he was involved in that industry. So also that was where, she was, because she was influenced by a very patriarchal group of ruling elite who had been in power for quite a long time. And, she waltzes in, and of course, we're not going to let this young kid tell us what to do. So, as I say, it was admittedly a difficult situation for her. And then at the same time, this is modern technology that, from the time she became queen to the end of her reign, changed enormously. I mean, just night and day. It was a revolution. So she was dealing with that. So this gets into all of that. I won't play those. People can play these. You can, as I always say, These slides, they'll be within the at the bottom of the YouTube videos, and you're more than welcome. I do encourage everybody, that's why I put them together, to go in and, you know, listen to these different video libraries that I put together, which does kind of give an overview and a more in-depth analysis of the different issues that I'm bringing to everybody's attention, or that I'm trying to. If you look at how many views I get on my YouTube and all of my social media campaigns, yeah, my awareness raising efforts have not been appreciated by my family, friends, algorithms on the internet, or anybody, at least not anybody in Washington. That's for sure. So again, this is the 1940s, what was going on within England at the time, and, you know, how mainstream media is developing, and the Industrial Revolution is developing, like History of Marks and Spencer's, shopping. That becomes, it's not just the, particularly after World War II, I mean, we saw that especially in the United States, but it happened as well in England, and eventually in all of Europe as it was reconstructed, and you had an economic boom, and the middle class were particularly enriched with that economic boom, and did lots of spending, and they sold their souls in the process. So yeah, Louis Mountbatten, with all of see, this is, I think I would have mentioned this in the last video on Hill House. One of the things, a friend of my mother's, whose sons went to Hill House, she said, oh, well, this has been going on for so long, problems in the courts and family courts, that nothing can be done. Yeah, I agree that this has been going on for so long, forever, but that does not mean nothing can be done. That is the attitude that it just goes from generation, and generation. And the underlying problems, you know, the psychological problems, relationship problems between people and in families, just go from one family, one generation to the next. Because nobody wants to face any unpleasantness. I mean, God, when anybody oh, they don't want any unpleasantness. I'm like, God, yeah, there's only unpleasantness to be had. Bobby Kennedy, when the volunteer said that to me, I was just like, oh, there's no hope for his campaign. Oh, it was the end by then. I'm like, come on, you guys. That's a perfect case study of what not to do. And I don't care if it's a congressional campaign or a presidential campaign. Oh, Lordy Lord. Yes. Bringing the masses into, you know, seeking enfranchisement for everybody so they can go and vote doesn't do any good if the masses are brain dead idiots and your press corps is just giving all sorts of propaganda. This is a recipe for a disaster. So yeah, as I said, she 1950s. Her father died suddenly, and all of a sudden she became, in 1952, Queen of England. And in fact, I believe I read someplace that Winston Churchill was not, because it was Queen Elizabeth who wanted to have her coronation on, you know, on TV and publicized on TV. It would have been the first. And Winston Churchill was like, well, no, I think that kind of is not a good idea. And he thought it was kind of denigrating for a very solemn tradition that, I mean, I don't know. I think there's arguments for and against. You know, she is the queen of the people. Um, before, I mean, okay, people who lived far, far, far away, but you know, 2 centuries ago, you know, the coronation. I mean, okay, they wouldn't have been in the church, but you would have had most of the people in the streets. I mean, just the larger the population, the more she's going to be inaccessible to the people. So anyway, I guess there's for and against. Why, you know, the right to privacy of the British royal family, and this, I mean, this kind of goes into any aristocracy, and this gets into the celebrities, because the celebrities, I mean, they have kind of usurped the the um, the role models that aristocracy have always provided for the rest of the people. So they have the same responsibility and the same, you know, lack of privacy. And, you know, you have to understand the higher up you get in a community, the more people are going to be looking at it, towards you as a role model. The that comes with the territory. And you have to act respectably. I mean, this is, I really think that Prince Andrew, as I say, I do not know if Prince Andrew ever had sex with a sugar baby. I don't know, you know, and really the sugar babies, most of them are in their 20s. I saw something, there was in the news, they got together all of the victims of Epstein, and apparently when they were with you know, the only time it was underage was with Epstein. And then when Epstein, they got too old for Epstein, you know, 18 and above and 20 years old, is then when he passed him out and around to his to his friends. And that's the story now, apparently. So it's kind of like, well, none of them are, these girls are not underage then. Maybe they started underage with Epstein, but you know, if Prince Andrew, whoever, that is maybe that happened, maybe it didn't, it really is irrelevant. I'm sure the man, I'm sorry, I'm sure the man had sex with people other than he went with the American actress, with Fergie. Who else did he date? I'm not sure. So yeah, I mean, like any red-blooded man. The funny thing is if the poor guy, I mean, these poor men, if he didn't have sex, if he's like, you know, pure in a, oh, what's wrong with him? Not red-blooded man, wait a second, you know. So they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. So you know, that whole thing from the beginning, I always said, first off, having sex with a 17-year-old is not pedophilia. It's not. I mean, okay, it depends on how old you are. If you're 18 years old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, I mean, that gets into, these are kids that, of course. Now, when there's 20, 30-year age difference, even 10-year age difference, like a 20-year-old, well, 20-year-old with a 30-year-old, that's their business. But say a 15-year-old with a 25-year-old, no, 25-year-old, you got more than enough 20-year-old. You keep it in your pants when you're around a 15-year-old, 16-year-old. So see, that's where it gets in so gray with what these Me Tooers have been trying to turn in, you know, redefine what pedophilia is. So anyway, I digress because that is an important issue, but This is another thing. Everybody, oh, well, of course, if he was innocent, well, then he wouldn't have paid her off and he would have defended his good name. No, Queen Elizabeth was the one who pressured him into it because she didn't want her festivities to be destroyed for her final jubilee. Well, she should have been more concerned, less concerned about some frickin' party and more concerned her son, her son's reputation. I mean, somebody did that to one of my sons. You would never hear the end of me. Are you kidding? I mean, and also not just for the name and the good name of my sons, but also for my reputation. I'm not going to bring up any, son who's going to do something like this. I brought up my sons to be, I mean, this is where we get into the mommy wars. And I mean, I just hope my son will understand what this has all been about. And that we need the rule of law. What I have been just fighting and fighting, and why I've been separated from them, and just everything that's going on. Because at the end of the day, that only keeps me going. Are my sons and their future, because everybody I know, la-di-da, la-di-da, let's go shopping, and who gives a shit? I mean, literally, this is where upper crust, as much as minimum wage people I work with, immigrants that need to go home. But and the upper crust, you guys have more power and spend more money, so you're more responsible. Again, the how this gets into Elizabeth II and 1950s and 60s, and the change, the trajectory of mass media there. Again, we get into what's going on, the debutantes, like it was 1958 Queen, I think I would have been on this one. Oh, I guess I didn't have it in there. But in 1958, the Queen discontinued the debutante, the Queen, it was, what is that? Queen Charlotte's balls. Because, let's see, Princess Margaret said every tart was getting in. Buying it. It was a real social climbing tool. And Prince Philip called them bloody daft. And so they'd been discontinued. And here's but at least they were not received at court anymore at Buckingham Palace. She didn't have them there. But they still went on, but they went in, all these debutante balls, they went into great disfavor during the 60s and the 70s, civil rights. I mean, this is, London, 60s and 70s. This is really, you can see the paradox of the traditional British elite with the royal family, and at the same time the decadence and how cool London is becoming, and how that changes during those years, and just has kept on changing and changing and changing. Oh, I remember the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I mean, that was a cult. That was a cult show. It was, more the audience, because I think that the show, like the movie, was not this great hit, but then it became this great hit because of the participation of the audience. I went to, when we were in London, I went to one of the movie theater and saw that, and it really was a trip. Yeah, and then there's the child abuse scandal that involves Lord Mountbatten. And Lord Mountbatten was very influential he was the one who wanted Prince Charles to marry Princess Diana. Um, and that was a disaster. I mean, that just, again, he was marrying a child. Where was everybody? Okay, she was about over 20. I mean, let's go back there to pedophilia. Um, so she's over 20, but this is the whole thing. I forget. So I don't think he was 20 years old. I think he was like 15 years old or something than her. But still, that is a big age difference, particularly, 20 to 35, 40. There's enormous changes that go on in your life between 20 and 40 years old. You are definitely, anybody who says they're the same person that they were 20 years old at 40 years old, I'm like, Houston, we got a problem here. You haven't learned anything then. If you're still doing the same stuff, if you still see the world, and if you still the same dynamics, the same stuff at 40, at 20, yeah, as I say, Houston, we got a problem. Big problem. So, I mean, at 20, you still should be discovering and, sowing your wild oats, male and female. So then 1980s, this gets into the Reagan era. Queen Elizabeth, she was part of the liberal movement from after World War II into the 60s and 70s. That all went on during her reign, and now we get into the 80s, a backlash and a swinging of the pendulums. Well, where's the puppet queen? This is precisely, she was just a puppet. And the how shall I say it, the British aristocracy just followed her lead. This laissez-faire, you know, I don't want to know, I don't want to deal with any unpleasantness. I just want to build gardens and go to tea parties and Astor and keep up, how shall I say, the appearances and I mean, I think Downton Abbey, I think that was one of the things that with that series, you saw this World War I and World War II, how it just profoundly changed the British aristocracy and their, how shall I say it, not only the institutions, but just questioning part of the family and part of them questioning those institutions, where the other part of the family is desperately holding on to them as the pomp and the circumstance and the trappings to try and hold on to the past, and can't move on. And you have, as I say, it's that you have both those things going on, but this is what's trickling down into the rest of the society, and that's why you have the pendulum swings. This is what I'll get into more into the next, and what I've been looking at with the Bush family. And that's, I mean, it's because you again you saw that with the Churchill family in my presentation for Cobham, but with the Bush family, same dynamics going on there. And how this generation, either you better get your shit together, or we're going to end up like Marie Antoinette and Place de Concorde with lots and lots and lots of, okay, we don't have the guillotines anymore, but they do. Now we just got mass shootings. Same difference. So again, here was these are all of the different, here I went through the different groups. Some of them I've heard of, some of I haven't. But I mean, we all know them as the BBC, the Thames, but behind that you have all of these different companies, and who are managing the communications industry. So this, like Sarah Ferguson, she was caught on tape, pay to play politics. I felt really bad for her when that whole thing came out, because I was like, excuse me. Well, first I would have been like, excuse me, Sarah Ferguson, what you had to do is you start a company as a consultant. You get the clientele. Same thing, exact same thing that you were doing. It's just painted in a different way, and then nobody can come after you. Yeah. It's the form that it was done in, but everybody's doing it. So, I could, as I felt sorry for, because I can imagine, people are like, what? She can't live on, what was it, 3,000 pounds a month or something like that. I'm like, 3,000 pounds a month when you got to keep up with the Joneses? Excuse me, when you got to keep up with the Windsors? Oh, Lordy Lord, that does not get you very far. You barely get off the curb on that. So anyway, here's the why was this film banned in the UK? So that's the, Princess Diana. Again, the paparazzis, that was all over the place. Prince Harry, he still to this day blames the paparazzi for his mother's death. I mean, I don't know, who knows? Again, that speculation. Was she taken out, or was it an accident? What's going on there? Here I found a video of the Blackstone group. Gunman kills Blackstone executives. It's like, oh Lord, why are all of these people? Shouldn't the ruling elite start asking themselves, why is everybody getting so pissed off? Why do we have everybody shooting us? Usually if people start shooting at you or throwing eggs at you, like Mark Lewis of the IMF, the Institute for Capacity Development there, when he was res rep in Turkey, I told the economists, I said, you guys, when they start throwing eggs at you, and in the case of his predecessor, Effie Salida, her son, it was a bomb in Kabul and killed him. Young man had just arrived, and he was in an expat bar. And lo and behold, the bomb, and it killed him. 25 years old, I think, or something. So anyway, yeah, when they start throwing eggs at you, bombs at your children, coming into the schools and shooting your children, you might want to say, something's wrong here. And it's not just something we got to get out of the water. I mean, really, I keep on repeating and repeating and repeating. So this was 2000. Here you had lots and lots. Talk TV. I mean, just like in the United States, that you have cable TV that really now has taken hold and gone all over the place. So that's where, when I grew up and when we lived in England, you had BBC One, BBC Two, and Thames. I think that was it. It was just the three. Like in the States, you had, what was it, ABC, NBC, and there were three of them. CBS, ABC, NBC, and CBS. When oh Lord, can you imagine how everybody would go on withdrawal if we only had 3 TV stations out there? And reruns now. If you want reruns or anything like that, you better. That didn't come in until the 70s and 80s, because otherwise, before that, when the show is over, the show is over. Oh my God, what would everybody do today? They might actually read some books. Oh, well, that's another part of the propaganda model. Yeah, so then we get into 2010, and into this century and everything so that's we get to the end of Queen Elizabeth's reign, and Prince Charles is taking much more, and the whole Prince Charles, Andrew, and Harry, excuse me, and Edward. They're adults now, and this is another thing, the British royals and their duties, and Princess Anne as well. You always hear about, well, yes, they're off on their duties. Well, what exactly do they do? So it's like, yes, they're off in their duties. So, like, well, what do they do in their duties? Other than give out awards, stand in lines, you know, like they're totally out of contact with, in their personal lives, how they're brought up, and the whole. I mean, those go with the traditions. Um, so it's much more difficult for them to know what's going on the ground, because they are brought up in this ivory tower. So that was the whole point of the Americans and the American Revolution, and we're going to become more democratic, and that's the advantage we have in our country, is we're not so elitist, and we're not on our ivory towers, and we do mingle with the people, and we know what's going on the ground, and therefore we will have a democracy and a more stable government, and the whole kit and caboodle. Um, so what do they do? I still want to know, what exactly are their duties? Because they need to stop with those duties and start, dealing with the reality of what's going on in their country, and really stop being just puppets of of the industrialists who have taken over. I mean, this is the advantage. I keep on pointing out and pointing out and pointing out that the reason that I am pushing and supporting monarchs, and trying to kick monarchs in the butt, the monarchs that still are around in Europe, and this includes Spain. Although Queen Letizia, she's a journalist, and she's a real social climber, and so I got some. Okay, but let's just say I am, trying to tell the monarchs they better wake up and smell the coffee, and start assuming, stop being puppets. I mean, this is what, with the problem that we've had in the United States. you know, we can go back, we can argue back to, could this be back to Nixon, Bobby Kennedy, excuse me, JFK, well, Bobby Kennedy's assassination, JFK's assassination. So, arguably we can go back and forth on that. But definitely since Reagan and the Bush, these are just puppets. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And even with Trump, I mean, that was particularly in 2016, it's like, oh my Lord, you people, are you kidding me? He's New York, Wall Street, real estate, luxury, this is robber baron. He's nouveau riche, okay, which is actually probably worse. And that's what you see. All of those old nouveau riche, the old guard robber barons have left. The nouveau riche are still around. I mean, Como, he's still desperately trying to become mayor when, oh, what his daughters did to him is disgusting. But yeah, they're all fleeing. They've all left New York, and now they got a communist mayor who's rising to power there. It's like, okay, you guys, just look at New York as a case study on how the robber barons of the 1800s, and then how 150 years later, 200 years later, look at how it's ending up. This is not a success story. This is a perfect example of, economics, social order, and just the melting pot, and you got all of the different things of what's wrong with this soup. Now look at it and learn from your mistakes. So, Trump, I was just like, oh Lord. But since he came into office, he has, actually made some decisions and taken some initiative. In fact, I just posted a thing because yesterday I was listening to him and I was like, his voice sounds off. Now, that could have been for various reasons. I mean, I know sometimes when I'm tired, all of us, whatever, but I was like, I was missing. Everybody was like, is he dead? I mean, I was like, God, you people. All of a sudden, airways, he's dead. See, the press, the problem with mainstream media, all of a sudden the rumor is he's dead. I mean, I didn't even hear about it until after the fact. So anyway, it's like, clone? Well, what's the difference? They're all puppets anyway, so yeah. So yeah, these days you can't put anything past them. So anyway, so I'm going to end this presentation with my question for all the men out there. Rob Lowe, you're the last one who got an email, well, excuse me, a voicemail from me. See if that pans out. So why won't men grow a pair? Instead of picking up arms and going to war, or instead of going looking for another conquest amongst all of the little tarts out there. And there are plenty of them. This one, queen of the crop. See, I mean, poor Harry. I defended, where is she? Yeah. Defended Harry. He needs to be liberated. That poor man. I mean, this is dysfunctional family 101. And, we can keep on repeating errors, or we can learn from our mistakes and move forward. I guess that's where the question remains at present. So, okay. Well, I hope this has been enlightening for the few people who watch it. And if you got to the end of it, oh my goodness, you get 5 gold stars, really.